Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are breaking down a massive internet trend that is completely redefining how people view their personal finances. If you've spent any time on social media lately, you've absolutely seen this term floating around, moneymaxxing. It's a cultural movement that actually has professional financial advisors paying very close attention right now. Because depending on who you ask, it's either the smartest money habit of the entire decade, or it's the very first warning sign of a culture that's about to totally burn itself out, trying to optimize absolutely everything.
So let's jump right in and ask the core question at the heart of this whole shift. Are these intense optimization strategies actually building real wealth and giving us financial freedom, or are they just layering a brand new kind of modern, metric-driven anxiety right on top of our bank accounts? To really understand the answer, we have to look at where this terminology even came from and why it has suddenly hijacked our feeds.
Because look, this isn't just a niche phrase anymore. Between January and May 2026 alone, media intelligence data tracked a staggering 96% spike in the online usage of the suffix maxing. And it didn't just grow in random mentions. Engagement with maxing content surged by over 200% in that exact same window. The internet has officially adopted a brand new way of describing how we pursue our goals.
So, what does this actually mean when you apply it to your wallet? Well, moneymaxxing is the process of taking your personal finances, treating them like a highly tuned machine, and proactively optimizing every single input you can control. We're talking about hunting down those annoying hidden fees, strategically stacking credit card points, automating your savings the literal second your paycheck hits, and basically squeezing the absolute most value out of what you already have. Fundamentally, it's about extreme resourcefulness, not just boring deprivation.
Let's look at how this all started. Section 1. The rise of moneymaxxing.
The trend actually started in some pretty niche and honestly sometimes controversial appearance-based corners of the internet. You might have heard the term looks maxing, but it definitely didn't stay there. Recent data shows that 64% of maxing usage online today is totally unrelated to physical appearance. It's expanded to cover literally everything. We're seeing sleep maxing, fiber maxing, and even joyful, totally absurd things like tiramisu maxing, which happened when a giant dessert went viral over in London. It's basically become this cultural catch-all for focusing on any topic to an incredibly intense degree.
But what is absolutely fascinating here is the cultural divide across platforms. Reddit and X account for the dominant share of mentions, about 34% each, and they drive this text-heavy, cynical volume with noticeably high negative sentiment. But over on visual-first platforms like TikTok and Pinterest, the trend is amplified in a completely different way. Over there, it's driven by positive, high-engagement lifestyle videos, where optimization is viewed as this empowering, highly aesthetic choice.
Which brings us to the context. Section 2, the economic reality check.
Here is the staggering reality we're dealing with. U.S. credit card debt just hit a fresh, all-time record of $1.25 trillion in the first quarter of 2026. For years, consumers kind of relied on this spend now, worry later mindset, what some financial psychologists are now jokingly calling credit card maxing. Money maxing is the direct cultural backlash to that massive debt burden. It is essentially frugality being completely rebranded and made cool again in response to a very real systemic problem.
And beyond just the debt, we are living in what economists call a K-shaped economy. That means the economy is severely splitting in two different directions. Prime borrowers are living in one reality, where things like luxury home sales are going up, while everyday folks are just getting squeezed tight by rising grocery and gas prices. When everyday costs feel incredibly unstable and totally out of your hands, optimizing the few things you actually can control becomes a really vital psychological coping mechanism.
And young people are under immense pressure right now. Check this out. A 2026 study from Northwestern Mutual found that over half of millennials and nearly 3/4 of Gen Z still rely on family money for financial support in some capacity. When you're navigating an economy where true independence feels that far out of reach, optimizing what little cash flow you strictly control, that becomes an absolute necessity, not just some fun little hobby.
Building on that exact data, the same study revealed that age 37 is the new expected average for achieving true financial independence. Think about that. That is nearly 2 full decades after graduating high school. With financial independence being pushed all the way back to your late 30s and 56% of adults saying it's way harder to achieve today than for previous generations, it's really no wonder people are turning to extreme optimization. They're trying to cope and claw back some agency over their own futures.
So why is this specific method so sticky? Section 3, the psychology of optimization.
The core insight of modern behavioral finance is pretty simple.
Humans are naturally irrational, and willpower is a finite resource. By the end of a long day, your willpower is just gone. If you rely on willpower alone to save money, you will eventually fail. Systems, on the other hand, compound quietly in the background without leading you to make good choices every single day. Moneymaxxing actually works because it shifts the entire burden of success away from daily discipline and onto automated system design.
So the crucial point here is that true money maxing builds a sustainable architecture of good habits. It's not about chasing some viral hack that works for 2 weeks. It's about setting up automated savings transfers the literal minute you get paid. It's doing regular, ruthless audits of your subscriptions. It's rotating those credit card rewards intentionally. And, quite cleverly, it's curating your social media feeds to create positive peer pressure and a sense of community accountability for your goals.
But we have to talk about the flip side, Section 4. When maxing becomes toxic. Recent psychological studies have highlighted a really sharp rise in something called socially prescribed perfectionism. This is this creeping, heavy belief that everyone around you, your peers, your family, the thousands of random strangers on the internet, expects total perfection from you. In that kind of environment, self-improvement stops feeling like a personal journey, and it morphs into this never-ending, highly public performance review.
There's a quote that captures this trap absolutely perfectly. As soon as you've optimized one area of your life, there's another waiting for your attention. Because the goalposts never actually stop moving, right? Optimization can so easily drift into a chronic scarcity mindset. You start to believe that if you stop optimizing for even 1 second, you're going to instantly fall behind someone else who didn't stop. It creates an exhausting treadmill where your success is literally never enough.
When you're constantly comparing your emergency fund or your credit card stack to some professional finance influencer on TikTok, things get dangerous really fast. Tracking every single dollar becomes this toxic compulsion rather than a path to freedom. We are seeing increased chronic anxiety, severe burnout, and people using these incredibly complex spreadsheets to try and manage their stress, which ironically just ends up generating even more stress.
So how do we get the upside without losing our minds? Section 5, How to Money Max Safely.
First step, you need to automate to remove decision fatigue entirely. Do not spend your precious willpower daily. Second, pick your battles. Don't try to optimize everything at once. Pick one high-yield savings account or one-point strategy, set it up, and let it run. And third, and I cannot stress this enough, never let your self-worth get tied to your net worth. The minute your identity is wrapped up in being the most optimized person in the room, you've already lost the game.
Because ultimately, at its absolute best, money maxing is just behavioral finance with much cooler branding. But at its worst, it's literally just hustle culture dressed up in a budgeting app costume. The whole goal of taking control of your finances was supposed to be achieving less stress in your life. It wasn't supposed to mean importing the exhausting anxiety of maxing culture into a brand new arena for you to constantly compete in. True financial freedom means knowing that sometimes good enough is exactly that, good enough. So take a step back and think critically about your own habits for a second. Are you building a financial system that actually gives you room to breathe, or is it just one more stressful project you're never allowed to finish? Think about it. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer today. Keep learning, take a deep breath, and we'll see you next time.